Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you never miss another story. The sun was high and merciless when the gravel crunched beneath the tires. I had no idea that the road I was traveling with Clarissa, my sister, would turn into the scene of the cruelest betrayal of my life. We had argued the entire morning, mostly about my car. It was mine, purchased through years of careful saving while working double shifts at the diner and freelancing online at night. Clarissa wanted it, badly, and so did my parents. They saw my car as the perfect solution to Clarissa's never-ending problems. Her late-night parties, her reckless driving record, her inability to keep a job. To them, she deserved it simply because she was the younger daughter, the fragile one. I, on the other hand, was expected to bend, to give, to sacrifice. But this time I refused. "You're being selfish, Marion," Clarissa hissed, her knuckles gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary as she drove us through the Arizona desert. I had let her drive only because she begged, and because I didn't expect what was coming. "I'm not selfish. I worked for this car. I paid for it. Why is it so hard for everyone to understand that?" I shot back, my voice trembling more from fatigue than anger. Years of swallowing my parents' unfairness had left me hollow inside, but the car was one line I wasn't going to let them cross. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like a storm waiting to break. And then, without warning, Clarissa pulled over to the side of the deserted road. Dust spiraled up around us as the tires skidded to a halt. "What are you doing?" I asked, heart pounding. Her eyes glittered with something cold, something final. "You're getting out." At first, I thought she was joking. But when she yanked open my door and shoved at my shoulder, I realized this was no joke. My bag, my purse with my phone and wallet was still in the trunk. I barely had time to grab at the handle before she slammed the door shut and jumped back behind the wheel. "Clarissa!" I screamed as she revved the engine. "Don't you dare!" The car roared to life, dust spraying everywhere, and then she was gone. The outline of the vehicle shrank against the horizon, leaving me standing in the choking heat, 3 miles from the nearest signal, with no shade and no water. The desert stretched endlessly around me, unforgiving and vast. My chest tightened with panic. I stumbled forward, each step crunching against gravel, my sandals offering little protection from the burning ground. I screamed her name once, twice, until my throat went dry, but only silence answered. The silence of the desert was terrifying, deeper than anything I'd ever known. As the heat pressed down on me, memories pressed harder inside. I saw flashes of all the times my parents had chosen her over me. The Christmas when they bought her a brand new phone while I received secondhand shoes. The graduation day when they left halfway through my ceremony because Clarissa had a bad day and needed comfort. The countless nights when my paycheck disappeared into their hands, always justified by her needs, always excused by "You're stronger, Marion, you'll manage." I trudged forward, dust clinging to my skin, my throat parched. With every step, the betrayal sliced deeper. I wasn't just abandoned by my sister. I was abandoned by the family who had enabled her cruelty, who had planned this with her. My heart told me this wasn't a spontaneous act of anger. It was punishment for refusing to hand over my car. I thought of the group conversations at home, the hushed voices that trailed off when I entered the room. I thought of the way my parents had been pushing me to move out of town without giving me the means to survive. And I realized with a chill running deeper than the heat could burn. This was their solution. If I couldn't be controlled, then I had to be broken. The hours dragged like years. My skin blistered under the sun, my legs weak and trembling. I used my scarf to shield my head, but it did little to stop the dizziness creeping in. Fear whispered in my ear, what if no one came? What if this stretch of road stayed empty until nightfall, when the desert's cold would finish what the heat started? I thought about collapsing right there, giving up, letting the silence swallow me whole. But another voice rose inside me, quiet but stubborn. If I fell now, Clarissa and my parents would win. They wanted me helpless, they wanted me erased, and I would not give them that satisfaction. So I forced my feet to move. One step, then another. Each was agony, but each was proof that I wasn't finished yet. When I finally heard the rumble of an engine in the distance, I nearly cried. A pickup truck slowed beside me, the driver leaning out with wide, worried eyes. "Miss, are you okay? Do you need help?" My lips cracked as I tried to speak, my voice raw from thirst and dust. "Please, water." He handed me a bottle, his hands gentle, his face filled with concern. "You're lucky I came down this way. You shouldn't be out here alone." I drank greedily, water spilling down my chin, the coolness shocking against the fire in my throat. For the first time since Clarissa's betrayal, I felt something bloom inside me that I hadn't felt in years. Hope. As he drove me toward the nearest town, I stared out at the endless horizon. I knew one thing with searing clarity: this was not the end of my story. This was only the beginning. The small town we reached that evening was a blur of neon signs, dusty sidewalks, and the heavy smell of gasoline. I barely remember stepping out of the truck, my body so wrung out from the desert heat that it felt like my bones were melting. But I remember the man who had rescued me insisting that I go straight to the sheriff's office. "People don't end up in the desert by accident," he said. "You should talk to someone about what happened." That's how I met Officer Ramirez. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that carried the kind of patience only years on the force could give. The minute I sat down in his cramped office, I broke. The tears I had been holding in since Clarissa sped away finally spilled. I told him everything. How my sister abandoned me, how my parents had always favored her, how I was certain this was all because I refused to give up my car. He didn't interrupt. He just let me pour it out until I was empty. Then calmly he pushed a box of tissues toward me and said, "Marian, this isn't just family drama. What your sister did is a crime. And if your parents were part of it, then they're accountable too." For a moment I froze. No one had ever said that to me before. My entire life my parents' behavior had been brushed off by others as strict, traditional, or just the way family works. To hear someone put a legal weight on it, it was like a light breaking through. Officer Ramirez asked for my phone number, and when I told him my phone was in the car Clarissa drove off with, his face hardened. "That's theft as well," he said. "We'll file a report." The next day, Ramirez called me back to the station. He had started digging. He asked me for my email, my bank records, anything that could show a pattern of financial abuse. I hesitated, my instinct to protect my parents warring with the anger still burning in my chest. But then I remembered the blistering sun, the taste of dust in my throat, the look on Clarissa's face as she shoved me out of my own car. And I handed everything over. Hours later, Ramirez slid his laptop across the desk toward me. On the screen was something that made my stomach twist: a group chat between my parents and Clarissa. He had pulled it from her phone records after linking her to repeated reckless driving charges. The messages were clear, damning, impossible to misinterpret. "If she won't hand it over, we'll make her see reason. Leave her out there. She'll come crawling back. Don't let her take it to Phoenix. That car belongs with us." My hands trembled as I scrolled, reading the words again and again. It wasn't just Clarissa. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act. It was all of them. My parents had been part of the plan from the start. They had orchestrated my abandonment like I was disposable property. I felt a rage so pure it scared me. My voice shook as I whispered, "They tried to break me." Officer Ramirez nodded. "And now we'll make sure they answer for it." "But Marian, listen to me. This is bigger than just reporting them. You've been abused for years, financially and emotionally. If you want to get free, you need to build a case, not just a complaint." That night, I stayed at a small motel near the station. I stared at the ceiling for hours, unable to sleep, my mind replaying every sacrifice I had made for my family. The summer I skipped college classes so I could work extra shifts to cover Clarissa's tuition. The Christmas I pawned my grandmother's locket, so my parents wouldn't lose the house after gambling debts. Every part of my life had been siphoned into theirs, until I was nothing but a shell of their expectations. And when I finally dared to say no, they tried to erase me. The next morning, Ramirez introduced me to Judge Martin, a family court judge who sometimes consulted on cases of financial exploitation. Judge Martin had a way of looking at me that cut right through the fog of doubt, like he could see the years of pain etched into my skin. "You're not alone anymore," he said, his voice steady. We can document everything. Every bank withdrawal, every unexplained bill in your name, every debt you covered. Build the record. That's how you'll not only protect yourself, but ensure they can't touch you again. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. For the first time in my life, someone was offering me a path forward that didn't end in silence or submission. I agreed. And so the work began. I reached out to Jackie, a friend from high school who had always stood by me. When I explained everything, she didn't hesitate. I've seen how they treated you, Marion. I'll help you pull every file, every receipt. They're not getting away with this. Martha, my boss at the diner, also stepped in. You've been working yourself to the bone for years, sweetheart. Use the back office to keep your papers safe. And if they come sniffing around here, they'll have to go through me. Piece by piece, I gathered proof. Old emails, bank statements, credit card charges I never authorized, medical bills that had been put in my name while Clarissa partied across town. Each document was a shard of the prison I had been trapped in, and with every addition to the pile, I felt the bars start to bend. But my parents weren't blind to what was happening. They started calling, leaving voicemails dripping with guilt. Marion, we're family. Don't air dirty laundry to strangers. My mother's voice cracked with a practiced sob. My father's tone was sharp, commanding. Come home and we'll sort this out like adults. I deleted every message. Each click was like slamming a door they had no right to walk through anymore. Still, the fear lingered. Late at night, I'd wake up thinking I heard Clarissa's car outside. I double-locked the motel door and slept with the lamp on. Every shadow felt like their reach stretching toward me again. But then I'd think of Ramirez's steady eyes, Judge Martin's calm words, Jackie's fiery loyalty, Martha's fierce protection. And I realized something important. I wasn't fighting this battle alone. I had people who believed me, people who wanted me free. The day Ramirez handed me a folder labeled Protective Order Draft, I cried again, but this time, the tears tasted like relief. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It wasn't just about the desert. It was about reclaiming every part of myself they had tried to strip away. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and nerves. My palms were sweaty as I clutched the thick folder of evidence, every page a reminder of what I had survived. Judge Martin met me in the hallway before the hearing. You've done the hard part already, he said, his voice calm but firm. Today is about making sure your voice is heard. When the bailiff called my name, I stepped forward, my knees shaking but my head held high. Clarissa sat at the opposite table, my parents flanking her. Their faces were masks of indignation, as if I were the one who had betrayed them. My mother dabbed fake tears with a tissue. My father leaned back with the confidence of a man who believed blood ties could erase crimes. Clarissa smirked, her nails clicking against the table like she couldn't wait to get out and celebrate. But then Ramirez presented the group chat transcripts, the reckless driving reports, the financial documents showing years of exploitation. The smirk slid from Clarissa's face. My mother's tears dried. My father's hands tightened around the armrests. For the first time, I watched their power unravel under the weight of truth. When it was my turn to speak, I told the court everything. My voice cracked at first, but I kept going. I spoke of sacrifices no child should be asked to make, of debts placed in my name, of nights I worked myself raw while Clarissa lived free of consequence. I told them about the desert, about the heat, the dust, the silence that nearly swallowed me whole. And I told them about the moment I realized they had planned it all, that my family had decided I was worth abandoning. By the time I finished, the courtroom was silent except for the sound of my own breathing. Judge Martin ruled in my favor. A restraining order was granted. My parents were ordered to repay certain debts, and Clarissa was placed under probation for reckless endangerment. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Enough to cut the chains. Enough to let me breathe. I walked out of that courtroom lighter than I had ever felt, the Arizona sun warm on my face. For once, it didn't feel like a weapon. It felt like freedom. The months that followed were a blur of rebuilding. I found an apartment in Phoenix, a small one-bedroom with peeling paint and creaky floors, but it was mine. I bought mismatched furniture from thrift stores and painted the walls a soft blue. Jackie helped me hang curtains, and Martha brought me a second-hand coffee maker. For the first time, my space was filled with laughter that wasn't poisoned by manipulation. At the diner, Martha promoted me to assistant manager. "You've got grit, Marian," she said. "And people trust you. That's leadership." With the extra income, I enrolled in paralegal courses at night. The law had given me back my life. Now I wanted to learn how to use it to help others. Clarissa tried to contact me once, sending an email filled with half-hearted apologies and veiled threats. I didn't reply. My parents tried twice, showing up at my workplace until Ramirez himself warned them to back off. Each attempt only strengthened my resolve. They were no longer my chain, they were simply people I used to know. 6 months later, I found myself driving along the same stretch of desert highway where it all began. The sky stretched endlessly, painted in hues of orange and violet. The air was dry but gentle, carrying none of the terror it once had. I slowed the car and pulled over, stepping out onto the gravel. I closed my eyes and listened to the silence. It was the same silence that once threatened to consume me, but now it felt different. It wasn't emptiness anymore, it was space. Space to breathe, to heal, to grow. I thought about the women who might still be trapped in situations like mine, too scared to say no, too conditioned to believe they owed everything to people who gave them nothing in return. And I made a promise to myself. I would use my voice for them. Since then, I've spent weekends volunteering with a local support group for survivors of family exploitation. I share my story, every raw and painful detail, not to relive the hurt but to show that survival is possible. That freedom is possible. Standing on that desert road, I felt whole. My family had tried to strip me of dignity, but I had rebuilt it piece by piece. They tried to silence me, but my voice was louder than ever. They tried to abandon me, but I found myself instead. This was no longer the place of my betrayal. It was the place of my rebirth.
Moral lesson.
Life has a way of teaching us that the people closest to us can sometimes be the ones who wound us the most. But betrayal doesn't have to define us. It can be the soil where resilience grows. My journey taught me that setting boundaries is not cruelty, but self-respect. That walking away is not weakness, but strength. And that family isn't always about blood. It's about love, support, and respect. To anyone listening who feels trapped or undervalued, know this: you are not alone. Your worth is not measured by what you sacrifice for others, but by the love and dignity you grant yourself. Healing takes time, but freedom is worth every step. So remember, protect your peace, guard your dreams, and never let anyone convince you that you are less than you are. You deserve joy, safety, and the right to choose your own path. Thank you for listening to my story. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and drop a comment below about the lessons you've taken from it. Your voice matters here.